Most people assume healing lives in laboratories, prescription bottles, and expensive wellness trends. That the real answers are always new, always patented, always more complex than the human body itself. But that assumption hides something uncomfortable. Long before modern branding turned health into an industry, people were already watching, testing, preserving, and passing down an entirely different kind of knowledge. Not mystical, not magical, observational, practical, earned through seasons, hunger, injury, infection, survival, and repetition. Because some of the most overlooked healing plants in history were never exotic at all. They were growing in fields, hanging in kitchens, pressed into oil, steeped into bitter drinks, crushed into salves, burned for cleansing, stored because they mattered. Used because they worked well enough to survive generations of real-world use. And today, modern research is beginning to confirm what old-world households understood without microscopes. That certain leaves, roots, resins, seeds, and fruits were never just food. They were tools, protection, recovery, quiet medicine hiding in plain sight. Some of these plants may help support digestion, immunity, blood sugar balance, circulation, inflammation control, and even the body's stress response. One of them was so valued it became a symbol of nourishment itself. Another may be one of the most underestimated anti-inflammatory plants still sitting in modern kitchens. And by the time we reach the final few, you will understand why the modern world keeps reinventing what traditional cultures already knew. Because this is not really a story about plants, it is a story about memory, about what happens when convenience replaces observation, when processed life disconnects people from the things that once kept families strong, and when modern people walk past simple, powerful foods without realizing they are brushing shoulders with centuries of accumulated survival knowledge. So let's uncover 15 ancient healing plants that were hiding in plain sight all along. 15. The bitter leaf that was never just a flavor. Bitter herbs. Most people think bitterness is a problem to remove, something unpleasant, something to sweeten, dilute, or avoid. But traditional cultures often treated bitterness very differently. Bitter herbs were not just tolerated, they were respected. In Old World food traditions across the Mediterranean and Near East, your bitter greens and herbs were commonly associated with cleansing meals, seasonal reset, and digestive stimulation. Long before people spoke about enzymes, bile flow, or microbiome diversity, they noticed something simple. Bitter plants changed how the body felt after eating, and that matters because the modern diet is almost engineered to erase bitterness. Processed foods push sweet, salty, rich, and hyperpalatable. Bitterness is bred out, which means one of the body's oldest digestive signals gets silenced. Research suggests bitter compounds can stimulate digestive secretions, including saliva, stomach acid, and bile. That matters for breaking down food, especially fats, and for sending the body a message that nourishment is coming. And certain bitter greens also provide polyphenols and plant compounds studied for antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects. Historically, these herbs mattered because heavy meals, preserved foods, and seasonal changes demanded digestive resilience. Today, they matter for a different reason. Many people feel constantly bloated, sluggish after meals, and strangely disconnected from real hunger and satiety. Traditional use focused on simple preparations. Bitter leaves eaten fresh, lightly cooked, infused in water, or paired with oil, salt, and sour ingredients to make them more tolerable. That combination was not random. Fat improved absorption of certain compounds, and acidity softened the harshness. Today, that could look like arugula, dandelion greens, chicory, or other bitter herbs worked back into meals instead of erased from them. Well, not as punishment, as a signal. Because sometimes the taste modern people reject is the one the body was designed to recognize, and that is only the beginning. 14. The resin that smelled like protection. Frankincense. Most people know frankincense as a fragrance, a scent, a relic of the ancient world, but historically it was much more than aroma. Frankincense, a resin harvested from boswellia trees, was valued across ancient trade routes not simply because it smelled rich, but because it was associated with purification, preservation, and physical relief. In traditional systems, resins mattered because they were concentrated, stable, potent, easy to transport, easy to store, and often used where the body was under stress. What makes frankincense remarkable is that modern studies have investigated boswellic acids in compounds associated with anti-inflammatory activity. Research suggests boswellia extracts may help support joint comfort and inflammatory balance by influencing pathways involved in the body's inflammatory response. That does not make it a miracle cure, but it does explain why traditional cultures kept returning to it. In survival-based societies, pain was not theoretical. Joint strain, repetitive labor, injuries, and chronic physical wear were part of life. Plants or resins that helped the body function under pressure became culturally important very quickly, and this is where things change. The modern world tends to split healing into categories: food here, medicine there, fragrance somewhere else. Traditional people were often less rigid. They observed systems. A plant could affect the air, the skin, the mood, and the body all at once. Frankincense was historically burned, infused, or processed into traditional remedies depending on region and use. Today, Boswellia is more likely to appear in standardized supplements, topical blends, or aromatics. The important point is not trendiness, it is continuity. A resin once treated as ancient value is now being examined through modern inflammatory science. That should make people pause. 13. The kitchen bulb that changed the blood, garlic. Most people think of garlic as flavor. The traditional households knew better. Garlic was one of those plants that followed people everywhere because it earned its place. It was pungent, easy to grow, easy to store, and impossible to ignore. Across ancient cultures, garlic was associated with strength, stamina, resilience, and protection during harsh conditions. Workers ate it, families preserved it, healers valued it, and the deeper reason is chemistry. When garlic is chopped or crushed, it generates sulfur-containing compounds such as allicin and related molecules that have been studied for antimicrobial, cardiovascular, and immune-supportive effects. Research suggests garlic may help support healthy blood pressure, lipid balance, vascular function, and aspects of immune defense. That is a very modern way of describing something traditional cultures could not name, but clearly noticed. Garlic mattered then because infection was a constant threat, food storage was imperfect, and physical endurance mattered. But it may matter now because the modern world is full of a different kind of pressure. Poor circulation, processed diets, elevated metabolic stress, and immune dysregulation. Historically, it was eaten raw, cooked into meals, mashed into preparations, or infused into oils and broths. Traditional use often relied on frequency rather than intensity. Small, repeated exposure, built into life instead of isolated into a protocol. Today, practical use might mean crushing fresh garlic and letting it rest briefly before cooking, adding it to soups, legumes, vegetables, and sauces, or using it regularly rather than rarely. Because with garlic, consistency may matter more than theatrics. This was never just seasoning, it was one of the oldest functional foods in the world. 12. The fruit that traveled with civilizations, figs. Most people think figs are just sweet, but historically, figs were survival food, soft, dense, portable, and naturally rich in sugars, minerals, and fiber. Figs were ideal for a world that needed nourishment without refrigeration. They could be eaten fresh in season or dried for long storage, which made them valuable in both daily life and uncertain times. In traditional households, they were not luxury items, they were food security. What makes figs more interesting is what sweetness hides. Unlike ultra-processed sweets, figs come with fiber, potassium, polyphenols, and various micronutrients. Research suggests diets rich in fiber and plant antioxidants may help support digestive regularity, cardiometabolic health, and microbial diversity in the gut. That matters because the modern world often separates energy from nourishment. People reach for fast sugar, but get no minerals, no fiber, no depth. Traditional foods like figs delivered sweetness with structure. They fed the body while slowing the metabolic blow. In older food traditions, figs were used fresh, dried, mashed into cakes, simmered, or paired with grains, milk products, nuts, and herbs. Their softness also made them useful for people recovering strength or struggling with appetite, and that is where the old wisdom becomes painfully relevant. Many modern people are undernourished in the middle of abundance, overfed but undermineralized, constantly stimulated but poorly fueled. Figs remind us that sweetness was not always the enemy. Synthetic excess is. The original version came wrapped in fiber, minerals, and restraint. 11. The tree leaf. That quietly defended cells, olive leaf. Most people praise the olive fruit and the oil. A very few think about the leaf. But the leaf may be one of the quiet powerhouses of the entire tree. Olive trees became symbols of endurance for a reason. They survive heat, rocky soil, drought, and time. Traditional cultures valued the entire tree ecosystem, not just the oil pressed from its fruit. Leaves were used in teas and preparations long before chemistry gave names to what they contained. Modern research has studied olive leaf for compounds like oleuropein and hydroxytyrosol, which have antioxidant properties and have shown potential in supporting cardiovascular health, microbial balance, and inflammatory regulation. These compounds are being examined for their role in cellular protection and metabolic resilience. Historically, that mattered because plant-based protection was not optional. Communities relied on what the landscape gave them. On a tree that offered oil, fuel, shade, and potentially restorative leaves became deeply woven into life. Today, olive leaf matters in a different way. People are under constant oxidative stress. Poor sleep, pollution, processed food, blood sugar swings, emotional strain. The body is not just tired, it is being slowly irritated. Traditional use focused on infusions and plant preparations. Today, olive leaf appears in teas and standardized extracts. But even beyond supplementation, it points back to a larger lesson. Old world healing often came from whole ecological relationships. People did not isolate superfoods. They lived among useful species and learned the many ways each one could support life. The olive was never just oil, it was a system. 10. The herb that refused to be fragile. Hyssop. Well, most people have barely heard of hyssop. That is exactly why it belongs on this list. Hyssop was one of those herbs traditional cultures kept close because aromatic plants often served more than one purpose. They flavored food, freshened air, supported breathing, and were used in cleansing rituals of household life. Again, not mystical, practical. When people lived closer to livestock, smoke, dust, dampness, and seasonal illness, strong aromatic herbs mattered. Hyssop contains volatile oils and plant compounds that have historically been associated with respiratory support and cleansing preparations. While the modern evidence base is narrower than for some other plants on this list, aromatic herbs in general have been studied for antimicrobial and soothing effects, particularly when used in infusions or inhaled preparations. Why did that matter then? Because respiratory comfort was everything. In a harsher environment, a chest problem could become a life problem quickly. Herbs that seemed to open, soothe, or freshen were not treated casually. And what makes that still relevant is how disconnected many people are from the role of aromatic plants in daily resilience. Modern households buy synthetic air fresheners, heavily processed cold products, and sterile-looking wellness items, while ignoring the fact that real herbs once formed the backbone of everyday support. Traditionally, hyssop was used in teas, steam-like aromatic preparations, and culinary mixtures in some regions. Today, it is less common, but the principle remains powerful. Strong aromatic plants were part of the old respiratory toolkit. Sometimes, the most forgotten plants reveal the most about what we stopped valuing. 9. The seed that helped carry nations. Barley. Most people see barley as old-fashioned, a background grain, something heavy and outdated. Traditional cultures saw durability. Barley fed populations because it was hardy, adaptable, and deeply useful. It grew where other crops failed. It could be cooked into porridge, breads, broths, and fermented preparations. And unlike modern refined grains, barley delivered more than calories. It brought texture, satiety, minerals, and one of its most important assets, soluble fiber. What makes barley remarkable in modern nutritional science is beta-glucan, a soluble fiber studied for its potential to support cholesterol balance, blood sugar regulation, and gut health. Beta-glucans help form a gel-like substance in the digestive tract, slowing glucose absorption and supporting satiety. That means this humble grain may help smooth the metabolic spikes that define so many modern diets. That mattered then because energy needed to last. Labor was physical. Food scarcity was real. A grain that kept people full, steady, and functional became culturally central. Today it matters because people are drowning in refined carbohydrates that digest fast, spike hard, and leave them hungry again. Historically, barley was often simmered into soups and stews, ground into meal, or used in nourishing, simple dishes that made the grain easier to digest. Preparation mattered. Slow cooking, soaking, pairing with herbs and fats. Today, barley can still be used in soups, grain bowls, and broths. Especially in place of more refined starches. Not because it is trendy, because it is structurally different. This is what the ancients understood. A grain can either drain you or sustain you. Barley was built to sustain, and later we will reach a seed even smaller that may carry even more concentrated power. 8. The fruit that protected more than hunger. Pomegranate. Most people admire pomegranates for their appearance. Traditional people valued them for what they did. The pomegranate was not subtle, deep color, dense seeds, sharp sweetness, staining juice. It looked like something potent, and across ancient food traditions it often carried that reputation. Not only because it stored relatively well and offered nourishment, but because richly colored fruits tend to signal high concentrations of protective plant compounds. Modern science has studied pomegranate for polyphenols such as punicalagins, anthocyanins, and ellagic acid-related compounds. Research suggests pomegranate may help support cardiovascular health, oxidative balance, and inflammation control. Some studies indicate potential benefits related to vascular function and protection against cellular stress. That is not surprising when you think historically. A fruit that could refresh, nourish, and possibly help the body resist wear would naturally become valued. Traditional use focused not on isolated compounds, but on repeated observation. People noticed how certain foods supported recovery, stamina, and general vitality. And this is where the contrast becomes impossible to ignore. Modern people often buy brightly colored drinks with no real plant density at all. Artificial flavor, synthetic color, added sugar, the image of health without the biology of it. Pomegranate is the opposite. It looks rich because it is rich. Traditionally, it was eaten fresh, pressed into juice, reduced into syrups, used in sauces, or integrated into savory dishes. Today, the most practical version is the least glamorous. Real fruit, real juice without excessive additives, or culinary use that keeps it close to its original form. Sometimes color is not decoration, sometimes color is chemistry. 7. The herb that worked on the gut first, mint. Most people think mint is cosmetic, a garnish, a flavor for tea, gum, or toothpaste. Historically, mint was functional. Aromatic herbs like mint earned their place because the digestive system is where so many problems begin. Heavy meals, poor water quality, food spoilage, work, irregular eating, stress. Traditional households did not always speak of the gut-brain axis, but they understood the lived reality of stomach discomfort, cramping, bad digestion, and unsettled nerves. Mint contains volatile oils, including menthol in certain varieties, that have been studied for their soothing effects on digestion and perceived cooling sensation. Research suggests mint may help support digestive comfort and has shown potential in easing certain forms of gastrointestinal discomfort. The sensory effect alone can shift how the body experiences tension and heaviness after meals. That mattered then because people needed simple, immediate tools that could be grown near the home. And it matters now because modern digestion is under attack from speed, stress, overeating, ultra-processed food, and constant snacking. Though traditional use was straightforward, fresh leaves in water, teas after meals, chopped into foods, or combined with other herbs. Nothing complicated, which is part of the point. The strongest traditions often survived because they were simple enough to repeat. If you are finding this kind of old-world health knowledge useful, take a second to like the video and tell me in the comments which of these plants you already keep in your kitchen or garden. Because the deeper we go, the more obvious it becomes that some of the best support systems were never hidden, just forgotten. Mint is not impressive because it is dramatic. It is impressive because it is reliable. 6. The oil that did more than nourish. Olive. Most people know olive oil as a healthy fat. That is true, but incomplete. Historically, olives were one of the great civilizational foods because they solved multiple problems at once. They provided dense energy, storage stability, culinary depth, skin application, preservation, and trade value. A good oil was not a luxury in the old world. It was infrastructure. Modern research has repeatedly studied extra virgin olive oil for monounsaturated fats and polyphenols such as oleocanthal, which has been examined for anti-inflammatory activity. Diets rich in olive oil, particularly in traditional Mediterranean patterns, have been associated with cardiovascular support, metabolic health, and longevity. But here is where it gets interesting. What made olive oil powerful was not just fat content. It was the way traditional people used it, drizzled over bitter greens, mixed with herbs, combined with legumes, what I paired with vegetables, who used to make simpler foods more satisfying and absorbable. Fat was not the villain, it was the carrier. This matters now because modern fat intake is often distorted. Either heavily refined industrial fats dominate the plate, or people become afraid of fat altogether and lose satiety, hormonal support, and flavor. Olive oil represents an older balance, dense nourishment without the chaos of modern processing. Traditionally, olives were cured, pressed, and used daily in measured ways. Today, practical use means choosing high-quality extra virgin olive oil, using it on real food, and recognizing that the old pairing of oil with plants was biologically smart, not accidental. Olive oil was never just a trend of healthy fats, it was a survival technology in liquid form. 5. Going at the spice that burned for a reason. Cinnamon. Most people treat cinnamon like dessert dust. Traditional food cultures treated it with more respect than that. Highly aromatic spices were precious because they did not just make food taste better, they preserved, warmed, stimulated, and transformed otherwise simple meals. Cinnamon became important because strong plant compounds tend to leave a mark. You feel them, smell them, remember them. Modern studies have examined cinnamon for compounds that may help support blood sugar regulation, antioxidant defense, and inflammatory balance. Research suggests cinnamon may improve insulin sensitivity in some contexts and may help moderate post-meal glucose responses when paired with carbohydrate-rich foods. That should sound familiar. Traditional people did not talk about insulin sensitivity, but they understood heaviness after eating, sluggishness, seasonal coldness, the value of warming spices, the way certain foods seem to sit better in the body when prepared with aromatic bark and seeds. Historically, cinnamon mattered because food preservation, digestion, and metabolic steadiness mattered. Today, it may matter because blood sugar instability has become one of the defining problems of the modern world. Cravings, energy crashes, abdominal fat accumulation, irritability, brain fog. These are not random. They are often tied to how violently modern eating patterns swing the system. Traditional use placed cinnamon in porridges, drinks, stews, and plant-rich meals. Today, it can still be used in oats, yogurt, cooked fruit, teas, and savory spice blends. But the deeper wisdom is not just to sprinkle cinnamon on processed sugar and call it health. The old approach worked because it lived inside a whole dietary pattern. A spice is only as wise as the meal around it. Still, cinnamon deserves its place, because sometimes what looks decorative is actually regulatory. 4. The vinegar that sharpened digestion. Grapevine and sour ferments. Most people think vinegar is just an acidic ingredient. Traditional households understood it as transformation. The grapevine mattered for many reasons, but one of the most powerful old-world lessons it carries is what fermentation does. When grapes, juices, or other plant foods were allowed to sour and mature, people discovered that acidity could preserve food, change digestion, and create entirely new uses. Oat vinegar became one of the most practical substances in traditional kitchens. Modern research suggests vinegar, including grape-derived and other traditional vinegars, may help support post-meal blood sugar control, gastric emptying patterns, and digestive function in certain contexts. Acetic acid has been studied for its effect on glucose metabolism and appetite-related responses. That matters because modern people often eat foods that are too soft, too sweet, too easy, and too disconnected from the digestive intelligence that traditional meals once contained. Sourness used to have a place, ferments had a place, sharpness had a place. These tastes did more than excite the palate. They prepared the body. Historically, sour preparations were used in drinks, dressings, preservation, and digestive support. Today, a realistic application might be a small amount of quality vinegar in meals, dressings, or diluted culinary preparations, especially alongside starches or heavy foods, not as a miracle shot, as part of a broader pattern. And this is where the forgotten truth becomes more obvious. Traditional healing was often built into ordinary meals, not separated from them. 3. The tiny seed with outsized strength. Mustard. Most people ignore mustard seeds because they are small. Traditional people learned long ago that size means nothing in the plant world. Mustard was valued not just as a flavoring, but as a pungent, stimulating plant that woke things up. The sharpness of mustard signals active compounds. Seeds like these mattered because they were compact, storable, easy to carry, and biologically loud. A little could change a meal, a preparation, even a bodily response. Modern science has studied mustard family plants for glucosinolates and related compounds, which can break down into biologically active molecules studied for antioxidant activity, cellular defense, and detoxification-related pathways. These compounds are part of what makes cruciferous plants so interesting in modern nutritional research. Historically, that mattered because protective foods were often embedded in modest, repeatable ingredients rather than dramatic remedies. Seeds, herbs, barks, and roots could quietly fortify meals day after day. And why does it matter now? Because the modern body is burdened by constant low-grade exposure, processed ingredients, environmental stressors, poor recovery, and inflammatory pressure. Now, tiny concentrated plants may help restore some of the lost complexity in the diet. Traditional use included crushed mustard in condiments, poultice-like external preparations in some cultures, and culinary use that delivered both heat and stimulation. Today, mustard seeds, mustard greens, and real mustard preparations can still bring that ancient sharpness back into daily food. Never underestimate a plant just because it fits in your palm. Some of the strongest biological signals arrive in small packages. 2. The sweet resin of recovery. Balm of Gilead and healing resins. Most people hear about ancient healing balms and assume symbolism. But balms existed because damaged skin, wounds, irritation, and environmental exposure were constant realities. In the ancient world, a plant-based balm was not poetic, it was practical. While various resins and aromatic plant preparations associated with ancient healing traditions were prized because they could coat, protect, soothe, and preserve. Their stickiness was part of their value. They stayed where they were placed. They created barriers. They carried aromatic and bioactive compounds. Modern research on certain resins and plant-derived topical compounds suggests potential antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, and skin-supportive effects, depending on the source plant and preparation. While the exact identity of historical balms can be debated, the broader principle is clear. Resinous plants often mattered because they combined protection with potency. That mattered then because skin was frontline biology. Cuts, cracks, burns, bites, dryness, and infections were daily threats. Today, it still matters because the skin remains a barrier organ under constant assault from climate, irritants, synthetic overload, and inflammation. Traditional use focused on topical application, infused oils, salves, and protective coatings. Today, this ancient logic survives in high-quality herbal salves, resin-based preparations, and skin-supportive botanical products rooted in old formulations. The lesson is bigger than any one balm. Ancient people did not wait for a crisis to respect the skin. They understood that healing often begins at the barrier. And now we arrive at the final plant, the one hiding so casually in modern life that most people never stop to consider how deep its history really goes. 1. The plant hiding in plain sight. Aloe. Most people think aloe is just something you reach for after sunburn. Now, that is an astonishing reduction of what this plant represents. Aloe became important in hot, dry cultures because it solved a timeless problem: the need for moisture, soothing, preservation, and tissue support in harsh conditions. Thick, water-rich, and naturally protective, aloe was exactly the kind of plant traditional people noticed, kept, and reused. What makes aloe so compelling is that both traditional use and modern research point towards similar themes. Aloe has been studied for polysaccharides, soothing gel components, and compounds associated with skin support, hydration, and wound-related applications. Some research also suggests internal preparations of aloe in certain forms have been explored for digestive support, though use internally requires caution and depends heavily on preparation and product quality. It's thought that balance matters. This is not about reckless claims. It is about understanding why aloe endured. People used it because it visibly did something. It cooled, coated, softened, supported. In a world of relentless sun, dry air, rough labor, and limited resources, that kind of plant becomes unforgettable. Today, aloe still matters because modern skin is inflamed, dried out, overexposed, and often treated with harsh products that promise more than they deliver. The deeper lesson of aloe is not just that it may help soothe irritated skin, it is that the best support is often structural. Restore moisture, protect the barrier, calm the irritation, do not always attack the symptom with more aggression. Traditionally, aloe gel was applied directly or processed into simple preparations. Today, utter practical use means choosing quality aloe products with minimal unnecessary additives for external use, or consulting reliable guidance before any internal use. Aloe feels modern because the beauty industry keeps rediscovering it, but it is ancient, which is exactly the point. What these 15 plants reveal is something bigger than nutrition and bigger than herbal tradition. They reveal how observant human beings used to be. Not primitive, observant. They watched what soothed burns, what helped heavy food digest, what seemed to protect the chest, the gut, the blood vessels, the skin, the joints, the energy, the recovery of a tired body. They paid attention to bitterness, sourness, pungency, aroma, color, density, and season. They built patterns around what worked often enough to keep using it. And then the modern world did something strange. It replaced relationship with convenience. It stripped bitterness out of greens, turned fruit into sugar, replaced real fats with engineered oils, replaced plant complexity with synthetic flavor, replaced slow food with fast stimulation, and then acted surprised when people became inflamed, exhausted, metabolically unstable, and disconnected from what nourishment even feels like. That does not mean the past was perfect. It was hard, limited, sometimes brutal. But traditional people were forced to notice things modern people outsource. And that is why this topic matters, because these plants were never important just because they were ancient. They were important because they were useful enough to survive generations. Useful enough that science is still catching up to what observation had already preserved. So the real question is not whether ancient people had secret knowledge. The real question is how much obvious knowledge modern people stopped seeing. Which of these plants surprised you the most? And which one do you already use without realizing how deep its history goes? Put it in the comments. Subscribe if you want more forgotten food wisdom, traditional wellness knowledge, and evidence-aware ancient living explained in a way that actually connects to modern life. Because once you start seeing ordinary plants differently, your kitchen, your garden, and your health never look quite the same again.